Hey guys, Simon here. Now, I thought I'd do an introduction to the video that's just about to come up because this video is actually a video of a podcast that Heitland and I put together, all about how I got started in the industry, what my beliefs are, why I look at things the way that I do when it comes to evidence-based training and nutrition, and why I decided to start up Velo Performance. So it's quite a fun video. I get a bit animated about certain things. We have a bit of a laugh. Jens talks a little bit about his training because I coach him, and I hope you really enjoy it. Now, look, just a quick thing. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about nutrition for older cyclists, you can watch this video. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what to do in your training to get the best out of your training as an older cyclist, you can watch this video. Now, I can almost guarantee that my fingers are in the wrong place, so just press the buttons when they come up. Hope you really enjoy the video, and yeah, enjoy. Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land, magical land. To another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land.
Today's guest is the Performance and Nutrition Director at Triforce Endurance, an award-winning trainer, experienced triathlon and nutrition coach. Please welcome to the show, Simon de Burgh. Simon, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Jens. Actually, for once in the UK, it's not pouring with rain.
It's snowing or what?
No, it's not snowing. I'm lucky. I live in the southwest, so I live in Devon, and everybody else has had snow, and we haven't. So we've been lucky, but it has absolutely tipped it down for last week. So I've been sat on my turbo for last week, which is, I love it. It's very effective, but frankly, I didn't get into cycling to ride indoors. But I know its effectiveness in training as you do too.
Yeah, let's dive into it. So before we go into your view on business and innovation in sports and triathlon and cycling, all that fun stuff I want to dig into with you. Tell us a bit about who you are, a bit about your story.
Okay, so, well, it's a long story. I'm 50. Well, look, when I finished school, I got some fairly okay grades, but I was never really knew what to do with myself. So I rode horses as a kid, and I've always been one of these people that have been really, I like my adventure. And even from an early young age, I was like, well, I don't want to follow the same path as everybody else does. I'm pretty sure I'm a bit of a nightmare for my folks. So I thought, well, do you know, I ride horses. I used to gallop them around like racehorse everywhere. So I decided to become a racehorse jockey. I went to Cheltenham and rode as a racehorse jockey for 4 or 5 years. Now, that was a lot of fun, but it was hard work. And I was an okay jockey, but it was just a really tough gig. I had to lose weight all the time, so I was really skinny. If you look at my YouTube video for my YouTube site that I'm just building, man, I was super skinny. And I made a decision very early on, about sort of 4 years into racing, that I thought, actually, do you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is crazy. It's a lot of fun, but I need to make a decision. I don't want to be 40 and doing what I'm doing now. So I changed, and I became a personal trainer. So I went to London, cut my teeth there, and then started helping people out with fat loss and doing long distance, because that was always a bit of an exciting thing to look at and go, actually, do you know what is possible over doing marathons and things of that nature. And then I got into triathlon. So I started coaching people for that and did pretty well, won a couple of awards. And then I realized pretty quickly that I didn't really want to work for these big companies, big budget gyms. They always take loads of money off you. It was always really restrictive. And I wanted to start an online business. So I created or co-founded Triforce Endurance. And I remember when I first started this, so it was, I mean, online is literally, it's kind of normal now for the most part, but even still in the fitness industry, that's seen as quite a cool thing to be doing or quite a radical thing to be doing. And this was done like 10 years ago. It's actually, it's almost that long, actually. It's almost 10 years. And I remember chatting to a few people saying, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to start it. And they were like, you can't do that. You can't run a business online. And I was like, well, I can, and I will. And just me thinking about that was like, well, actually, why can't you? What's stopping you from doing that? The tools maybe weren't as slick as they are now, but you know, well, give it a shot. So if I go back a step, when I was working as a PT, I was doing really well, but I'd pushed and this is kind of why I wanted to start my own business, but I pushed myself so hard, I pretty much gave myself depression for a year, because I was trying to do everything. So I was trying to coach, train. I was also a qualified tutor, so I was also doing some tutor work and all that sort of stuff. And I literally just broke my own back. And I remember thinking, I can't do this anymore. It's killing me. So I went to go and work for my brother for a year as his sort of like administrator, sort of like person looking after his main business. But doing that, I realized this isn't me. This is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. And at that time, even though I was going through that, it's like feeling like I was wading through quicksand mentally, I was still starting to grow Triforce. So I was thinking about how to put that together. So I created this ridiculously rubbish website and started to put out content about training. And it's only because I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I've got a fairly decent job. It's paying me well. Chuck it out and see what happens. And there was always that thing, I want to help people. I want to be that person that looks at what's going on in the industry and help people get the right answers to things. Because there's a lot of rubbish out there. And it was like, what if I can set up a business and see how it goes? That's where it goes. So I started off really small, but it quickly started to grow because the content I was putting out was quality. And people were asking us questions. So Billy, who is part of Triforce, he and I were like, we got to a point where we were like, well, one of us needs to decide to throw our job in, and I was like, well, I'll do that. I'll chuck it in. Yeah. Much to my folks and my brothers' disgust, they were like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "Yeah, a little, but I'll give it a crack." But actually, from there, we just expanded, and we never stopped doing, and we're still doing it now. The one thing we do is give out great content. It's consistent, and yes, it's evolved and grown. So if you look back at our timelines on our social media, oh man, they're embarrassing. But, and I've had loads of business coaches say, well, you need to get rid of those. And I'm like, well, no, I don't think we will ever do that, because looking back at it shows you are evolving understanding of how we can produce good stuff. And if anybody, I just think it's a shame to delete all of that. It just shows our journey. So that's me really, started that. Obviously, we're putting up loads of good content on training, nutrition, supplementation, thinking about how to be a better athlete for triathlon. And our whole focus was that. So our whole focus was like, who's our target market? And let's talk to them. Let's not talk to anybody else. Let's just make sure that our conversation is directed to the people we want to coach. And that was quite a real vision to start off with. And that's because we had to nail it down tight. I reckon when we first started, we were trying to hit every mark in the book. I mean, we were like, this is stupid. So what are we trying to achieve? People don't know who we're talking to. So I started that and founded it with Billy. And we're growing over time. So we've got another coach on board. That's going to grow again. We've got another coach waiting in the wings at the moment. So Triforce, especially during COVID times, has actually been a real lifesaver for us because our whole business is online. The difficulty, obviously, because of COVID, is because nobody's been able to race. But that doesn't seem to have detracted from any of our athletes. If anything, because we've got the tools to help them stay motivated and do the really good training, and we understand them as individuals. We've helped them get through COVID, and it's been hard, don't get us wrong. We've had to innovate within the year. So generally we kind of know what's going to come up, right? And when COVID hit, we were like, we have to change our whole model. We have to change everything inside it, in the fact that they may not be able to race, but how do we keep them interested? How do we make sure that they train in a way that if they do race, they can just go to race and race really well? So we sort of moved things around and gave our athletes different things to focus on. But we were lucky because we've never done physical stuff with Triforces other than our holidays that we do in Mallorca once a year. So that's when we do the physical stuff, but everything else has been online. And that's been a really interesting, fun thing to do, I think. And I still love it. So triathlon and that adventure part of it, that's what's really cool about our sport. It is a tough sport to get right, to really get it right, especially at the top end. And there's a lot of nonsense out there on how to train for it, what nutrition principles you should be putting out there. I'm constantly stunned by how people are duped about nutrition and supplementation from the fitness industry, and it drives me absolutely insane, which is why I'm constantly learning. So 2 years ago, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I could sit on my laurels and go, well, I know everything. Well, I don't. And I keep learning from people who are way cleverer than I am. But I'm part of this sort of like, it's a common term now in the fitness industry, sort of, they talk about it as sort of like evidence-based. So they're looking at the science to practice and what works and what doesn't. And I think what I've learned over the last 2 years is even I'm starting to be very critical of all the information that's coming through. I'm very careful about the information that I'm giving out is as correct as possible. A classic example is we've been doing lots of lives at the start of the year, all about nutrition with our guys in Triforce, and we've been talking about every aspect of nutrition, what works, what doesn't. Some of the fads we've been seeing, hormonal stuff that people talk about that they really shouldn't do because they don't know what they're talking about, fat adaptation, keto, all that sort of stuff. And I'm really careful about the language that we use because I think people just like throw it off the cuff. And even I've now found with working with our athletes, I have to stop and check myself and again, hang on a minute. That's right, but I just need to tweak that because that means something else if we talk about it in those terms. So yeah, as obviously you can see, I'm passionate about what we do. And I think people use that word passionate really lightly. And I am. It's like, what I want our guys, I've also said this to Billy and Laura, if our athletes leave us, which doesn't regularly happen, but if our athletes leave us and they walk away and go, I didn't really learn anything, Simon, I'd be like, what? Yeah. What were you doing in the time that we coached you? So I think that's really cool, and we're constantly evolving. I think last year we did a lot of connecting in the industry. When COVID hit, I remember having a conversation with Billy and saying the one thing we need to be doing is reaching out to other coaches who we know, like, and respect, and asking them how we can help each other stay alive in this industry. Yeah. And that was a really cool thing to do because we made some really cool connections, and it was a good way to sort of help each other out, and it was a great way to keep our athletes really engaged. So yeah, lots of cool things have been going on that front.
So then I mean, you have been working with Triforce the last years, and then you started a new adventure. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so with my own triathlon journey, I was okay at triathlon. I was pretty quick on the run, bike, and swim. But I've had Achilles issues from a very early age, and the more over the time, they've just thickened. And I've
every practitioner I've been to go and see have said, look, you're just unlucky. You've got very thick Achilles, and they're not friendly to running long distances. So I can do like a 5K run, and I can probably run it quite quick if I trained for it. But if I run anything over time, I break down all the time. And I got to that point in my own triathlon training that I was getting to, I wanted to try and get to the worlds in 70.3, and I was getting quick, and I kept on breaking down. And after 3 years of trying and breaking down, I was like, I've had enough of this. This is really tough mentally and emotionally. And I love my bike. So I was like, I'll focus on triathlon for my athletes, and I'll learn and I'll spend all my time doing that and helping my athletes out. But for me, I'm going to take a step back from that and just chill for a bit and just ride my bike and just enjoy that, because it is the one aspect of the training that I love big time. And I'm pretty handy on a bike. So I'm like, well, let's just focus on that. So for the last sort of like 4 years, that's what I've been doing. I've not been doing triathlon myself. I've just been coaching it, and I've been riding the bike. But I've done some races, and I kind of enjoyed that. But I always think racing as an amateur is really dangerous, because everybody thinks they're Chris Froome and they're not.
Yeah.
And I raced a couple of races where I did really well, but I also raced a couple of races where I saw some horrendous crashes. And I remember thinking, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be in that melee. I remember from being a racehorse jockey, from going to hospital a couple of times, from having nasty crashes, like, I just don't want to go back to that point. So I decided, actually, what I'd like to do is do some challenges. So I've done crazy things like from Land's End to London in one hit, which is 300 miles. I've ridden around New York as a 312 event solo, so my own adventure. And I was like, let's just crack around that. And that was for a bet. So someone said, I bet you can't do it in X time. And I was like, I'll give it a crack. I lost the bet, by the way, by about an hour.
How long did it take you?
Off the top of my head, it took me about 10 hours riding time to get around. So it's crazy. And then I did like some silly stuff like ride 100 miles every day for 10 days for charity, for Shelter in Mind. I went and did the Milan San Remo Gran Fondo. Last year, because of COVID, obviously, because last year I was going to go and do Tour de Mont Blanc in France, and that was cancelled. And that's a crazy ride, because that's like 200 miles with some insane amount of climbing. And that was cancelled. So a great friend of mine who we've done lots of crazy stuff together, he was saying to me, well, we've got to do something. So he did Everesting. And I was like, well, everybody else doing Everesting, there's got to be a challenge locally that I can take on and crack, or at least give it a crack at. And there's this local loop that we ride round, and the current local record for 24 hours is 16 loops, which doesn't sound a lot, but it's 20 miles round. And it's pretty hilly. So I think it's like 19,000 feet of climbing, or just over. So I took that on because I was like, well, let's see if I can beat it. And so I did that, and I think just naturally I've become a cyclist. As my triathlete friends around to me say, you're just a dirty cyclist now. And they're right. But I love it, and I love the challenge that it gives you, and I love the fact that, I still ride out with the boys on a Tuesday, and we trash around our Tuesday smash up, and I can still hang out, I can still hang with all the tough guys and sometimes beat them, and they're like, how are you doing that at 50? And I'm like, I train well. I don't mess around with it. I still have fun, so I still ride out with the boys on a Sunday. But there are moments in my, especially in January, it's like perfect time to really build your your fitness and your power and your strength. So when you go into the spring, you are like super quick. And I just think, when I listen to all the stuff that people talk about training for older cyclists, I'm just constantly gobsmacked by the misinformation. It's still the same thing with nutrition, right? Nutrition training, misinformation, old school stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, originally I was like, well, I just want to do my own thing. But then I realized that actually, because I follow lots of different people in the industry and people in the nutrition industry, I think something really rang true over COVID. They were saying, look, if you've got a story to tell and you've got experience and you are good at what you do, it is criminal not to help people. And I'm like, this guy's, I think it was Mark McDonald that was talking about that in his podcast. But I remember listening to thinking, oh, Martin, I can't believe you just said that, because now it suddenly shone a little light into my head. I was like, okay, I do stuff on my social media channels about what I've been doing, crazy stuff I've been doing on the bike. And it was just for a bit of fun. And then it suddenly dawned on me that actually potentially I could turn that into a business. It doesn't detract from anything that I do with Triforce, because Triforce is growing and it's still my big business. It's still the big business that we want it to be. But I thought, well, actually, as a 50-year-old, maybe I can turn what I do socially into a business to show people, inspire people that they can do more as they get older. And rather than just be a bit frilly with it with my own social media stuff, turn it into a proper business where people can look at it, learn a bit more about it, learn about what's right to be doing from a nutrition and supplementation side of things, and also be part of something that people can look at and go, hang on a minute, if I follow these training principles at my age, I can still be fast, I can be strong, I'll be healthier, I'll be leaner, I'll be fitter, and I'm people who are all doing the same thing, who are excited about their training, but don't need to be, if I can say it, anal about it. Because as much as I love my training, I also kind of like my downtime too. And I think there are some very specific things we need to be doing as older athletes to mitigate our age-related sort of like decline, you could call it, to make sure that we are stronger, faster, fitter. And I think that's what I decided to do. So it dawned on me in the middle of COVID. I was like, do you know what? I'm going to start a new business, and I don't know what to call it, but I came up with Velo Performance Cycling Club, or VPCC for short. And I just started a bit like I did with Triforce. I started from a concept and really dialed into who I wanted to talk to. And I think it changed constantly, and it's still tweaking in my mind of what I want and who I want in the business. The cool thing about Velo Performance is, unlike Triforce when we started it, I wasn't so aware of what I needed to do to draw people into the network. Now I'm much more aware of who I want to talk to and what the premise is behind the business. So my thinking with Velo Performance is I don't want to train people who want to do crit races or racing or any kind of TT stuff. This is not for them. What this is about is the keen, enthusiastic cyclist who's maybe just bought a bike and thought, I like my cycling, but why am I as slow as I am? And why are my mates kicking my ass? And I'm like, because you don't train in the way that you should do, and maybe your nutrition principles aren't the way that they should be. And there are some real quick wins you can be doing from a beginner cyclist, even to a seasoned cyclist, to change your physiology. Good case in point, one of the guys that I coach, he's 65. And when he came on board, he said to me, you will never get my FTP greater. I'm too old for that. I started laughing out loud. He was like, why are you laughing? And this guy's like in big business. I was like, I'm laughing. So A, don't say never. And B, what a load of rubbish. If the reason why your FTP's never grown is because you've just done rubbish training. And we need to change that attitude a little bit. as I get older, I still keep hearing it. And this is the other premise behind Velo Performance. It's like, stop believing as you get older that you're just slower, fatter, late, whatever the way you look at it. I was about to say lazy, but maybe that is part of the thing that is the issue. People just get lazy as they get older. But I think in my mind, if you train really well for it and you really are guided in the right way of what works, then automatically you suddenly start to see yourself in a different light. You realize that you can do more. You realize you can be stronger. You realize you can climb those hills faster than you thought you ever possibly could do. All you needed to do was do the right training. So I remember chatting to my athlete and saying, look, I'm going to get that power up whether you like it or not. And over the year, we really worked at it. Now, his FTP's gone up by 20 watts. The only issue with, he's 65. The only issue with that is that his training gets harder. So I remember when we redid his functional threshold test, and he was like, this is great. And then there was a little sigh. He was like, but training's just about to get a little tougher, isn't it? I was like, yeah, that's the downside. But what's really cool is that he's got a change of an attitude to himself now. So he is going, last year he went to Girona and rode mountains that he used to ride nice and steady because he's 65. Now he's smashing up those hills, loving it and dropping his mates. And he's got a bit of youth back into his attitude to what he does. And that's the thing I think that's really important. We don't need to be old in our thinking as we get older. In fact, I think we need to be far from that. We need to be thinking a little bit more like, right, let's see what I can get out of my body. So I think this is what Velo Performance is all going to be about. Yes, it's surrounded by cycling. And yes, this is what it's about. This is what I'm about. I'm about cycling. I love it. I love that sort of, challenge and the adventure that it gives you. But I want people to also understand what it takes to get really good in their training. But also, I think, and this is the thing about nutrition. So the one thing I've learned over the years is the evidence-based side of nutrition. And it's still an evolving science. People are still learning things. So what I knew about 2 years ago, I didn't know then, and I now know now. And the things that I did know have changed, and I need to rethink my thinking on the current thinking of what's being talked about. So, and this is the thing. So it's a constant battle with the nutrition stuff because there's a lot of nonsense out there in social media side of things. And I also think as you get older, you need to look at your nutrition a lot differently to our younger counterparts. So we have, as we get older, our physiology changes. And actually, I had this conversation with someone who messaged me the other day after I put a post out. It was a rant on our social media networks about don't believe everything that you read and see from professionals. Because there was a pro lady talking about seed cycling. And she was talking about how she only ate a certain amount of seeds a couple of weeks during the week because it optimizes her hormonal balance. And I'm like, oh, what? This is just information from the 80s. This is outrageous. But people were buying into it. And I was like, hang on a minute. Why are people buying into this? It's just utter nonsense. There's no scientific background to it. There's zero practice to it. It's just some, dare I say it, moron talking about rubbish stuff. And I was like, wow, this fascinates me. So I put a video out saying, look, you need to be really critical thinking about what people are telling you to do. And the more I looked at it, so obviously as I've got older, I'm looking at how I can stay stronger, fitter, faster, be able to still put out a lot of wattage on the bike, be able to climb fast, be lean, be healthy, how I can stop my aging physiology from making me older. is the best way to do it. Now, can you do that with training and nutrition? Yeah, you can, but it's not rocket science and it's not special. It's just understanding what's going on with your physiology. So there's a lot of people trying to sell testosterone boosters, DNA testing for your physiology, which is, both of those, by the way, are rubbish. Both of those are non-scientific based. And just when I see people trying to sell them, I think, what a shame. People, A, what a shame people believe that. And B, what a shame people are trying to sell that to make money out of people. It's like doubly duped. And it really hacks me off seeing things like that. So what I'm trying to do is give people the really straightforward guidelines, which, let's face it, aren't exciting. You're not going to sell a book. Oh, this is a straightforward way. It's not exciting. There's no magic to this. But I'm trying to help people demystify that and understand what they need to do as an older athlete. So, yeah, that's, I've talked the hind leg of a donkey, but
no, I love it. It's super good, and I think that's also what makes the difference in business.
Yeah, and I want to have fun with this too, right? You know, so someone dared me to start my own YouTube channel, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, why not? Should I give it a crack? So I think part of the business that I want to do is, yes, I'll have some social media presence, not as strong as with Triforce, because that takes, you know, that's a lot. But with the Velo Performance stuff, I will talk about training, nutrition, what I'm up to, what our athletes are doing, as in some of the stuff thing. And one of the cool things I want to do. So 2 years ago, I rode in Mallorca, and I rode 100 miles every day for 100 days for charity. And I raised about $5,500 grand for the charity's Mind and Shelter. Now that was just let's give it a crack and have a go at it. But this year I was thinking, well, actually, I would, because potentially we're not able to do the things we want to. This year I was thinking, well, actually, I wouldn't mind doing something for those charities again. So I've to come up with, because I live in the southwest in Devon, which is pretty hilly. I've come up with a little challenge, which is 5 days riding 5 of the southwest sportives, the hilliest sportives in the southwest, or as hilly as locally as I can make them. And it's just over 503 miles with 44,038 feet of tail climbing. And my mate, who I normally do silly challenges with, he looked at me and goes, "You can do that on your own, mate." But then it dawned on me, because I was going to do that, and it dawned on me, was actually, do you know what? As part of trying to draw people in and get people to think differently about their fitness and challenge themselves, I would, on the website, I create a little thing called Ride Your Challenge. And you can download a t-shirt, or you can buy a t-shirt from the website. That's been created now at the moment. You can download a t-shirt from the website. All profits from that t-shirt will go to the charity. I don't make anything out of it. And the idea is to get people to hashtag Ride Your Challenge and tell me what their challenge is going to be and when they're going to do it. So it gives them a focus. So that could be ride your first 50 miles. It could be ride 50 miles the fastest you've ever done. It could be ride your first 100. It can be whatever you want. It could even be some person saying, "Simon, I'm inspired by that. I'm going to ride around the world." Now, hey, look, if people want to do that, that's cool, right? And, you know, I'm not saying to people watching this, go and ride around the world, guys. What I am saying, though, is make it personal to you, but also make it a challenge. Don't just go, well, I normally ride 20 miles around. I'm just going to ride 20 miles around and buy the t-shirt. That, to me, is a cop-out. Do something that makes you slightly a little bit nervous about it, but also then train for it. Make it a priority in your life. Make it something that when you walk away from it, you go, that was cool. I'm really glad I did that. And it can be very individual. So it doesn't need to be mammoth, but it just needs to be something that you look at and go, yeah, okay, I took that on board. So I've challenged you to do that. What are you going to do? And I'm creating that at the moment it's only literally just come over the last week. that I suddenly thought, I'm going to do that with this challenge. I've not even started talking about it. I've not even really launched Velo Performance as such. Although I've got athletes in there already because they're like, what are you up to? And I'm like, well, I'm doing this. Do you want to be part of it?
That's awesome. I think that's also the fun part where that's the entrepreneurial way of thinking of it, where you look into it and building a business out of your passion and the drive of what you have in you. Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant example for a lot of others who are looking into building businesses and or running business already, working with passion and using that. How do you see innovation in the whole sports world in the businesses you are in?
I think what's really, I hope, innovative at the moment is that science to practice and evidence-based approach to things. There's a lot of, as I keep saying, there's a lot of rubbish out there. And there's a lot of old science and old school thinking. Some of it you can't dismiss because it's built off really good science, but a lot of it is pretty rubbish. And there's a lot of people talking nonsense out there. And I think from me, what's exciting is there are people out there who are learning the right way to do this properly and giving out really good information and being really honest about, look, that's out of my scope of practice. Maybe you need to go and speak to this person. What I think is really exciting is that connectivity across different practices. So we're the coach, but what we've done over the last year is we've brought in an online physiotherapist. So if any of our athletes get injured or need to ask specific questions about injuries, we can tap that resource and we don't need to think about it. But we know that this person knows what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. So there's that. The really cool thing about online coaching is that's growing, it's becoming more acceptable. So the innovative part of us is just constantly trying to think, how can we make our athletes better and who can we pull into our network that can improve on that? In actual fact, I spoke to one of my other athletes who's in Canada. He has a mindset coach. And she's someone I'm probably going to bring into Triforce and Velo Performance Gear. Look, if you're struggling with things, maybe you need to speak to her for an hour because she can help you understand why you look at things the way that you do. Now, that's out of my scope of practice, but I think it's a really cool thing if people are struggling with their identity or why they make the same mistake with their nutrition constantly, because it's not about education sometimes, it's about your relationships with food and your understanding it needs to be challenged and changed. I can't help you with that. I just simply don't have the psychological understanding and tools to deal with that. But if I can pull someone in and go, look, this is really cool. That's, I think, really great. And I don't think other coaching companies do this enough, especially from maybe in the mindset field they do, but not in triathlon or sports. And I think that's really important. So I think that's the exciting thing about what we're going to see in the future.
And that's cool. So how do you see your business evolving over time from now on?
Organically. I think the answer to that is everything I look at when it comes to with Triforce and things that we've done with that is like, know what you do well and repeat it and show people what you do well, and that helps grow the business. Look after your athletes as much as you possibly can. So give them as much value as you possibly can, help them, make it part of a community. So that's the thing that I think we do really well at Triforce and with Velo Performance. It's a community where people feel like they are listened to, they have a voice, and they are part of a bunch of people who are all trying to learn the right way to do it and get inspired from each other. It's not, because there's a lot of communities, free communities, and I hate the free community side of things because it's always full of people who are not that engaged, maybe full of bullshit, all that sort of stuff. And I just don't want that in my business anymore. I want people who are really invested in trying to make a change. Now, they don't have to be bloody great cyclists. They have to be really good triathletes. They just have to be ready to make that change. And that's what's really cool about triathlons and really cool about Velo Performance. We have people who have done crazy stuff that I have on a bike in Velo Performance, and we've got people who are literally just been riding for a year, kind of like they can ride hills and stuff, but they're like, what do I do next to get fast? I'm like, that's cool. This is what you do. This is how we do it. And they're learning stuff and they're loving it. And that's what we do with triathlon as well. So I think that, that I think is really important, is know your market and talk to them and don't waver off it. That I think lots of people do that in their business, right?
Yeah, 100% agree.
And then make it fun. You know, I think that's the cool thing about Velo Performance. It's a little bit more me, as in I'll be a bit brasher and a bit cheekier. And I hopefully that doesn't push people away, but I think at 50, I'm still a bit of a child at heart. You know, I love my adventures and I love having a bit of fun with it. And I just don't think people see 50 in those terms anymore. People still think 50 is like put a rug over your legs, watch Countdown for the rest of your life and start dying. I'm like, hang on a minute. We need to change that conversation a little bit. We need to have fun with ourselves and be more physical. And I think we just need to look at the data and the science behind it. The more you look after yourself, the fitter you are, and the stronger you are, as in sort of like proper strength, as in hitting the gym, and the more physicality you have, the better it is for your overall health, not just physically, but mentally, and everything else that happens off the back of that. So yeah, that's I think that's what I want to do with the business. That's how I think it will grow. Is people will go, hey, look, this guy's 50 and he's kicking ass. He's having fun with it too. You know, he's like doing crazy stuff and pulling people in. And that's the other thing. I want to connect with people. So there are other people in the fitness industry and also cycling. You just need to look at social media and stuff. There are other people, younger, admittedly, doing the things that I want to be doing. But actually, maybe connecting with those guys and collaborating would be a really cool thing to do. So I guess that's where again, it's part of having the fun bit. Make it fun, and it's not really like it's a task anymore. It's just a bit of,
yeah. Slowly getting towards an end. So how do you keep yourself up to date? What are the sources you pick on, and how do you consume news and topics around your businesses?
Okay, so when it comes to the nutrition side of things, I keep up to date, and there are certain people that I follow within the fitness industry who I used to have quite a lot of people I follow, so I've narrowed it right down, because you can get pretty waylaid by other people chit chat, and there's a lot of information out there. So the people I follow on when it comes to nutrition are Danny Lennon from Sigma Nutrition, and I've studied with a guy called Martin McDonald, and he does MNU nutrition, so that's evidence-based nutrition. And then I follow another really geeky podcast called We Do Science Nutrition, which is like, I literally have to sit down and write this stuff out when I listen to it, and maybe go over it 4 or 5 times. But I love it because it's helping me understand the facts of nutrition. And then I follow other people outside the long distance community, or when it comes to nutrition and training and strength training, Brad Schoenfield and people like that. And then when it comes to triathlon, that's just literally just looking at different science papers of what works. I'm interested in trying to figure out what works for older athletes. At 50, I want to make sure that what I'm doing with my athletes is working, and there is specific reason behind it. I did a couple of courses last year on triathlon coaching because I had time during the COVID side of things. I wanted to make sure that what I was doing was right and my current knowledge and understanding was on top of it. And I just read. And I think the thing is, I'm very careful about what courses I buy into now. I want to make sure that if I am going to spend money on something, the person that's talking to me actually really knows what they're talking about. And I think that's for me that's really important. And then so it's just I'm just constantly keeping an eye out what the industry is talking about. When it comes to injury prevention and things like that, that's when I generally, because again I understand it, but it's out of my scope of practice. So I make sure the people that we bring on board are on the same evidence-based understanding and trajectory we are on. And I think that's really important.
Awesome. So how can people find you? How can people reach out to you?
Right. So look, if you're into triathlon and you want to be the best you can be at Ironman, then you need to go and check us out at triforceendurance.com. We've got a lot of experience of helping people who are sort of intermediate beginners get and finish a really solid Ironman. And then we've got a lot of experience of helping people get to Kona, which is the World Championships. And then if you're a cyclist and a keen cyclist and you like the idea of being part of a bunch of people who are just training well, getting the right answers to the right nutrition questions to make sure that as you get older, you're eating in a way that supports your physiology and not some kind of weird fatty diet that you know most people follow, could go down that rabbit hole. Then you need to find us at veloperformancecyclingclub.com, and both of those websites have our own links to our social media networks on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Yeah, and I will put the links as well into the show notes.
Yeah, all right.
And any last shout out from your side towards everyone who is listening?
It's okay. So when it comes to the coaching side of things, a lot of people are always looking for a quick fix. They're always thinking, how do I get here faster than everybody else? What's the minimal amount of training I need to be doing? Now, in our experience, there is a minimal effective dose, but if you do that, then you are probably just going to be a bit average. The answer to everybody's question is be specific, train consistently, and you will hit your goal. It's when you're random and all over the place, and it's just like business, right? If you were to train randomly and have a random thought process to your business, you'd probably get a random result, right? There's no rocket science to this. The consistency is the magic sauce, I think, when it comes to training. How you train then, therefore, and your specificity, can't say that word, in your training then dictates how good you're going to be. And the other thing is, you and I have talked about this, get a coach. Yeah. Because the one thing that I've learned from starting the businesses of both of these is that when you have someone that's directing you and challenging you and giving you the answers and putting you in a place where you're actually have accountability, then you get excited about what you're doing and you actually get it done. Whereas if you don't have someone that's directing you, you kind of just fall by the wayside. So I think that's probably the best thing to say. It's like, be specific, be consistent, get someone who's directing you and giving you good coaching skills. That's my answer to that question.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being on the show, Simon, and looking forward to see all your challenges and adventures going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I've really enjoyed this.
Cool. Thank you.
Take me to another place where the fairy tales don't end. Magical, magical land, magical, magical land. To another place.